Hi folks, this is Karim Rao from IT Visualizer channel. Today we'll continue our lab, the Mass Effect lab. This is the sixth video, or video number 6. We have been discussing in the previous video the following: install and configure DHCP server role and configure DHCP IP scope and activate allow and deny filters option. First of all, what is the DHCP and what is the scope and what is the allow and deny filters? First of all, we have been discussing that to make a network between PCs, for example, here is the graph. If we need to make a network between PCs, as I said before, why we make network between PCs or link PCs together through a network, so we can share the resources of each PC to the other one, or share of the resources of PC1 to PC2 and 3 and 4 and 5, and any PC can share his resources with the other PCs in the network. Okay, so to do this we need to have a PC, and every PC should have a network card. This is the way that these PCs will communicate with each other, and we need to have a switch and to connect each network card of each PC to this switch, and then we need to have every PC to have a unique ID. Okay, so to have a unique ID, this ID is called an IP address. Okay, how to give these PCs this unique ID? There is two ways, something called static IP address and dynamic IP address. How we can, or how these two ways are done, I will show you all a graph. So first of all, we need to know that DHCP is abbreviation of Dynamic Host Control Protocol. So as I said before, every computer in the network should have an IP address or a unique ID. Okay, we can add this unique ID through something called static IP address, where a user assigns an IP address manually. How we can assign this IP address manually? We go to the start, as you see in the graph, start, then control panel, then control panel, and then network and sharing connection, and then we go to the network connection. Okay, and then go to the properties, and then we go to the internet protocol and then properties. So here we use the following IP address, and then we can add the IP address manually. This way is called the static IP address. Okay, so this is one you can do it if you have 2 or 3 PCs at most, but you have a lot of PCs, though you need to use the second way. Okay, but anyway, we not only put the IP address, we can put the default gateway. This is the device that will get the PCs to the internet. This default gateway, it is the router in the most cases, and the router also has a unique ID, so you can put the IP address of or the unique ID of the PC and the unique ID for the router, or the IP for the router and the IP for your PC, and you can put the DNS server. We have said before also that the DNS, it's a way to facilitate the communication between the PCs in the network using names, not IP addresses. So as we said before, for PCs to communicate with each other, you need to know the IP address of each PC. But as for the human brain, it doesn't memorize numbers so large like this number, so you can easily remember a name. So if you want to communicate with a PC in your network, you just need to type the name and then you can get to it. How this is done? This is done by the DNS. So when you, for example, need to communicate with a PC A, so you just click A or communicate with A, the DNS will go and it will have a table, and it will see the PC A has the IP of so and so, so he returns the IP for you as the PC, and then you can communicate with the PC that you need. So it's an indirect way. The DNS translates the name of the PC you need to communicate with it to the IP address of this PC and return it back to you, so you can communicate with it easily. So you don't need to memorize. The DNS will memorize the IP for you. Just need to tell her or tell it the name of the PC, and he has a table. Each PC or each name of PC, it's and in front of it its respective IP address. So he will return back the IP address for you, and then you can communicate with it. So this is the first way, is the static IP address. You need to put the IP address, the subnet mask, the default gateway, and then the DNS server. This is the first way. Okay, the second way, before that, we need, as I said before, to have unique IP addresses to every PC in the network. For example, if you have 2 PCs that have the same unique ID, so there will be something called IP conflict. These two PCs will not be able to communicate with each other in the network, okay, and the other PCs will not be able to communicate with them. So you need to have a unique ID for every PC. If this happens, these two PCs will not be able to communicate with each other, and the other two PCs will not be able to communicate with them, okay. So this is the static way. The dynamic way is to have a server and you install the DHCP server role on it, or the DHCP server services on it, and then this DHCP will give IP address automatically to the computer, okay. It's not only will give the IP address, will give the IP address and the subnet mask and the default gateway and the DNS server. So this will be done automatically, but you need to make sure that the option obtain an IP address automatically in the internet connection setting should be done, or should be choose as to obtain an IP address automatically. So if you have this, we just need only to power on the machine, and then it will broadcast, or it will begin telling that it's, or broadcasting, I mean that it tells, or it sends a message to every PC in the network that it needs an IP address. So the DHCP will get this broadcast, and then it will acknowledge it, and then it will send the IP address and the other setting to the PC. IP address request, it will get an IP address. And then how to know the IP address? You can know it from a couple of ways. You can go to the control panel and then open the network connection and sharing, and then open the connection, and then you can see the details. So you can see it here, the IP address, the gateway, the DHCP server. You can see the IP of the DHCP server. This should be a static one, okay, should be assigned as a static one, because the DHCP server IP should not be changed, and the static way it is used for putting IP addresses to PCs that their IP addresses should not be changed for a long time, okay. So we have the DHCP and the DNS. These two should be static, and the IP address, it's taken by the DHCP, which have the DHCP enabled option. This can be a way you can see the IP and the setting of the client, or you can go to the command prompt and then type IP config. Also you can see the DHCP enabled and the IP address and so on, so okay. This IP address, okay, let's first go. So this is the way that you can get an IP address. This is the dynamic way. So there is the static way, and we have discussed it, and this is the dynamic way. The dynamic way, it's done through the DHCP, a server that have the DHCP service installed on it, okay, and it communicates with all of the PC in your network, especially in a domain environment, okay. So here, how this DHCP will know how much IP addresses to distribute. You need to give him a scope, or to start from which number and end to which number. So here I am telling him to start from the IP address 10.0.0.1 and end with 10.0.0.100. So this is the range he will distribute IP addresses or unique IDs from 1 to 100, okay. So this is the scope. When we install and configure the DHCP, we need to configure the scope, okay. So here, as we can see, that we will have from 10.0.0.1 until 10.0.0.100. All of these are distributable to over 100 PC in your network, okay. So here there is a way for the DHCP to efficiently use the IP address. First of all, we need to say that this is the scope, okay. This is called, what is the scope? It is the start IP address and the end IP address. This is called the scope, and all of these IP addresses are called pool, okay. So this is called IP address pool, okay. So this pool, or this IP addresses, for the DHCP to use them efficiently, it works with something called lease. What is a lease? Lease, the IP address is given to the computer automatically, okay, but it is for a certain time, for example for 10 hours, 12 hours, and then the PC needs to communicate again with the DHCP to renew or give him a new IP address, or give him a permission to still use the same IP address for another amount of time. Why this? We use this kind of method because if you had, for example, 100 PCs and they are all 100 IP addresses, for example, and they are all distributed, so if there is any another PC wants to get an IP address, it will not get it, okay, because all of your PCs have got all of the IP address pool. Okay, so how we can solve this problem? We can solve this problem with the IP address lease. For example, if this PC is closed for a moment, or it is powered on, sorry, it's powered off, and it doesn't work for 8 hours, as I said before, the lease time, so this IP will be released and the HSP will get it back. So if there is another PC, it can give him the same we give him the same IP address. Of course, this is powered off, okay, so and powered off, and this PC is not working with the IP address for 8 hours. This is the lease time, okay. So if the PC is powered off and the IP address is not used for an 8 hours, which is the lease time, this IP is released and it is again can be distributable by the DHCP. Okay, so this is a way that we can use efficiently the same number of IP addresses. If you have a limited number of IP addresses and all our pool or our IP addresses range or IP address pool are distributed, so this is a way that we can use the IP address pool efficiently, okay, especially if not all of our PCs are on all the time. So we can use the IP address when some of them are powered off. We can get new PCs and give them the IP address for the powered off machine, okay. So this is called lease. The lease is the amount of time IP address assigned to one computer. The lease is to help make sure the HP does not run out of IP addresses, okay, and this is called lease, okay. So here we have from 1 to 100, we have 99 PCs that can get the IP addresses, okay. So here let's consider that we don't use the lease. We have only 3 IP addresses. We have 3 PCs. The 3 got the IP addresses, okay. So now let's consider, or let's consider that this PC is powered off. If I not use the lease option with the DHCP, this IP address will not be distributed again, okay. So and also the pool is ended because they are only 3 PCs. Let's consider we have from 1 to 3 and we don't use the lease option. So if this PC is powered off, the IP address, it is attached to it, and I will not be able to distribute it again. So for example, if you have another PC that wants to get an IP address, we will not be able to do this, okay. So this is a problem, okay. But what if we use the release, or we use the lease time, okay, or we use the lease option? So after power off the machine for 8 hours, the lease time will be expired, so this IP will be detach from this PC and get back to the IP address pool of the DHCP, and it can distribute it again. So this is a way that why we use the lease option, okay. And here we have something called address reservation. What do we mean by address reservation? Address reservation, I need a certain device or certain computer to get a certain IP address. How we can mark this certain device, or how we can differentiate it from other PCs? We can differentiate this device not by the name but by the MAC address of the network card. As I said before, every PC needs a network card to be able to communicate with the other PCs. This network card has a unique ID. So there is 2 unique IDs in the PC. One is the IP address and one is the MAC address of the network card. So the network card has a unique ID, okay. This ID, we will use it to identify the PC. So we can identify the PC with the IP address and the MAC address, okay. So here what we will do, here we will reserve an IP address for a certain PC that has the MAC address of the network card of so and so. So this is also can be configured through the DHCP option. The reservation ensures specific computer or device will always be giving the same IP address, okay. So for example, here is the PC name and this is the MAC address. Reservations are typically given to specific devices such like network printers, servers, routers, etc. By the way, guys, this video or these slides are from a video that I have taken from a channel called Power Cert Videos. They have lovely videos describing different concepts of IT, okay. So you can visit it, okay. And then the DHCP can run on a server, have Linux or Windows. You can use both services on a Windows or a Linux server, and it can be also run on your DSL router at home. So your DSL router at home, the different devices in your home gets IP address automatically from the router, and the router also, it will not work as a DHCP, but it also will work as a default gateway, or it is the device responsible for getting you and all of your devices out to the internet. So this is in brief what was, or what is the DHCP option, okay, or what is the DHCP used for. And then we have been discussing installing file server resource manager and configure file quota for both department shares and user home directory folders. So we have created in the previous video something called department folders, and we have shared it, okay, and we have created something called user home directory folders and share it, okay. Both folders, okay, I need the users, when they put their data in it, to be limited to a certain amount of gigabytes. For example, I need the department folders, when the users put data in it, this should be until 10 gigabytes, okay. And for the user home directories, I need them to be only for 2 gigabytes, okay. And the quota, this is called the file quota, okay. And then also I need certain files not to be put in these folders. For example, I need in the department folders to block audio and video files, and also the same applies for the user home directory folders, okay. I need also to block audio and video files, okay. This is some called file screening. So we have discussed the file quota and the file screening, okay. What is the file resource manager, or what is the department shares, and what is the home user directory folders? We have discussed also this in the previous video, but I can discuss it again. Department share, what I mean by department share, here I have just a moment. So here I have my domain controller. I have installed something called file server service on it, okay. By installing this service, I will do the following. I will take a part of the hard disk of this domain controller and create folders on it, okay, and then share it, okay, and share it like sharing a Facebook post. So I need to create folders for every department, and then share these folders so everyone in my network can access these folders from their PC. So this is centralized location, a centralized hard disk. We created centralized folders for every department and share them so every PC also every department or every member of a department that has a PC can access the department shared folder, okay. So this is done. And after sharing these folders, we specify or limit a certain Active Directory group to access this shared folder. For example, if Karim is a member in the Active Directory group that's called IT group, he can access the folder that I have made for his department on my file server and share it, so he can access it and put his data on it. So the IT group can access the IT shared folder, the HR can access the HR shared folder, the global share group can access the global share folder, and so on. So this is what is called department share, and how we can control what the user or the group can do to these folders or shared folders. We can control it using something called permissions. We have two kinds of permissions, Smb Share Permissions and NTFS Share Permissions. This is a type, or it is an option that through it you can control what the user, the Active Directory user or group can do to the folder. So here, for example, I give the IT group or the Active Directory IT group full control over the shared folder through Smb Share Permissions and NTFS Share Permissions. So one asks why we have two kind of permissions, why it's not only one. This is like having a safe with two keys. So if you have a safe with two keys, this is more secure, even though the permissions have the same effect. So full control over NTFS permissions is equal to Smb Share Permissions full control also. But we do this, as I said before, to have two layers of security or more security layers. How this will be done? We have been saying, or we have discussed this before also. We will make a centralized folder, or we create a main folder which is called department shares, and we will create in it 4 folders. We will share them, okay. So first of all, we will create these folders, okay, and then through the Smb Share Permissions script, the script will share the folders. We will put different permissions to different Active Directory groups on every folder, okay, that we have discussed before in the upcoming or the above graph, and it will also remove the group everyone from the shared permissions in the folders, because by default when you share something we have by default a group called everyone that it is giving on every shared folder full control. So we need to remove this group because this will allow everyone to access the folder, and we don't need this. We need every department to access its specific shared folder. Okay, so this is done through Smb Share Permissions script. This will share the folders. We will assign the different permissions to the different Active Directory groups, and we'll remove the everyone group from the shared permissions. This is for the Smb Share Permissions. As for the NTFS, this is done through another script that will have the blue permissions. This is NTFS Share Permissions. Also this is the permissions, and they are typical from the Smb Share Permissions, which are as green. Okay, so at the end what we will have, when we have for example an HR, something like widow, this is widow, he is a member of the HR group. So as a member of the HR group we need her to see the HR department share or HR folder. In this example it sees it as a network map drive, and the name of the department is on the network map drive, and it is giving letter M. This is not done, should be done. For example, here we have stopped, or at the steps we have said, here we have stopped until we have the script. Just a moment. So here we have run the two scripts and everything is shared, but until this step we can't have this result. For example, until running the scripts, having widow to see her department share or department folder as a map drive, this should be done using something called mapping group policy. So mapping group policy will get, or will make a group policy and take the department share location, and then we will give it an M drive or give it a letter M, and then we will prohibit or limit the access to this network map drive to a certain Active Directory group according to every department. So the department of HR have an Active Directory group for the HR and the IT and so on. So this after this will give or will allow widow to have a network map drive for its department share, and we will limit the type of or the size of the data to be put on this network map drive through the file quota, which we have been discussing before. We will limit it to 10 gigabytes, and we will also have a rule that she could not put video and audio files on this department shares. This for the department folders or shares. As for the user home directory folders, the same concepts apply. So here also instead of taking a part of the hard disk of the server, this centralized location and centralized hard disk, we take a part of this hard disk of the server and we create for every Active Directory user a folder of his own. So we have 70 Active Directory users, will have 70 folders, okay, which is called user home directory folders, and we need to share these folders so these users can able to access them. Okay, so and also the folders will be named according to the username of the Active Directory user. Okay, so we will have a centralized location. We need to install the file server role on the domain controller, and we'll take a part of this centralized hard disk or this hard disk of the server, which is in a centralized location, and they will create folders, okay, for every Active Directory user, and these folders will be named according to the Active Directory user names, and it will be shared, and we will control what this Active Directory user will do using the same concept of Smb Share Permissions. So here we can see that Karim can have full control over his folder or user home directory shared folder, and will be given full control. Okay, so this also will be done. The same concepts apply as for the department shares. This also will be done. We will create a centralized folder, and then in this folder we will use a script that will create for every Active Directory user a folder by his username of the Active Directory, and it will share it, and it will give every Active Directory user full control over his shared folder. Okay, so after making this script, if we go to the Active Directory user properties or Active Directory properties of the user and go to the profile tab, we can see that the user or the home folder will be option will be appear as L. This user home folder will be mapped as a network drive L, and it will be named according to the username of the Active Directory user. So let's return to the example of Widow. Here Widow, she will have the department share as a network map drive. It will be named according to the department name and an M letter. This and will have it will have its home or user home directory folder. It will be named according to her username and will be given letter L, and we will have a quota on this folder to 2 GB, and we will limit through file quota, and we will limit what we will block audio and video files to be put on this user home directory folder using file screening options. So we will use file quota and file screening options to put quotas and block certain types of files on department shares and user home directory shares. This can be done through installing the file resource or file resource manager, and use the file resource manager to control the quota and the file screening. So we have discussed this in the previous video. We have discussed the DHCP, the file resource manager, and configure file quota for both department shares and user home directory folders. We configured file screening to block audio and video files on department shares and user home directory folders. And then we have created a second virtual machine. This virtual machine, we will have the Microsoft BitLocker administration monitoring tool installed on it. Okay, this so this server, it will be a member server. It will be a normal server. We will install Windows Server 2019 on it. We will join this server to the domain, and then we will install the MBAM or Microsoft BitLocker Administrator Monitoring Tool on it, and from this server we will control the whole BitLocker process on all of the PCs in our domain. So this virtual machine, we have 2 network cards installed on it, and we will make a team between them for redundancy. So if one of them fails, the network connection to the MBAM server will not be down. So we will have 2 network cards with 2 cables installed in them and plugged in a switch. As I said before, for this type of networking, the PC need to be installed, or the network card should have a cable on the switch, and the same applies for the other PCs, so they can all communicate to each other. Okay, so we have done this. We have done the network teaming, and at the end we have joined this virtual machine to the Mass Effect domain, and we give it a name which is EDMF02, and we give it a static IP address. Okay, and at the end we have created a checkpoint, we have backed up our 2 virtual machines. One will be for the domain controller, which is called EDMF01, and the other for the MBAM server, which is called EDMF02. We can have a small graph here just to finalize, or you can have the whole picture. So if we can go to there and to the AD tools, then to here, and then we have the Hyper-V for the Mass Effect. Here we can see, not this one, we have the Hyper-V graph. We can see here from this graph that this is our laptop, this is the Hyper-V program, and this is our MEU domain or Mass Effect domain. We have the 2 servers, the 2 IP addresses, the 2 names. One will have the EDMF02 MBAM installed on it, will be a member server, and it will have BitLocker installed on it, and the other is the first domain controller, which will have Active Directory, DNS, WINS, group policy, and so on. And they all installed on a switch or a virtual switch. Is an internal switch, and its type, it's a type internal switch, and it's called DC internal switch. Okay, so by this we have discussed in this video, or sorry, in the previous video. In this video we will begin working or installing the MBAM software on the server. So before that, I need to show you all from where we will work this video, or we will work installing this Microsoft BitLocker administration monitoring tool through using this website. And we have a couple of steps, or we will use this as a reference for our working with the or reference for installing our MBAM software. We will use this website and this instructions, I have put them in a PDF and I put them in a Google Drive link under the or in the description section in the video. Okay, so we'll use this as our guide to install the MBAM. So we need to have just a better look on what is or how the MBAM or what is the MBAM. We can just simplify it by this graph. The MBAM, it is a software, okay, a software that from it we can control the BitLocker process for all of the PCs in our domain. This software we can access it through a web page. So this application, it will work from a web-based page, okay, and this page will be named according to the server name plus the domain name. So what we will do, if for example we need to monitor the process of the BitLocker, we need to go to a page and then we type the name of the server and press enter. Then we will get the home page or the page for working with the MBAM software. This web page or this software will work through a web page, and all of the BitLocker process installation and recovery keys and the data concerning all of these PCs will be stored to a Sql database. So we need to install the MBAM software, and we install a web server, or we will install a web server role on the MBAM server. Okay, so we will first need to make this server as a web server, and then we will install the MBAM software to use the web server as its interface. And this MBAM will use a database to store the recovery keys and all of the BitLocker process PC names and so on this SQL database. And this SQL database, from it we can run reports. Okay, so we can get reports on the MBAM or the BitLocker process status, how much hard disks are encrypted, what is the recovery keys, what is the recovery agents. All this will be done through SQL reports that will be run from SQL database. So how we can control all this process, controlling the access to the MBAM software and the access to the SQL database and the access for the SQL reports. This will be done using Active Directory users and groups. So here we will have the following 3 users. This will control the access to the website or the application of the Microsoft BitLocker monitoring tool. So these 3 will be used to control the access to the MBAM software, and these 2 groups will control the access to the SQL database for the MBAM software. So there is 2 type of groups, one that can read the data in the SQL database, and the other can read and change the SQL database or read and change the database or the things in the SQL database. Okay, and the last one, it is the MBAM report group. This group will allow certain users to see the reports of the MBAM. So this, by putting members in this group, you will enable certain users to get reports or to see reports from the MBAM, and by putting users in these 2 groups, you allow certain users to read the database or to read some data from the database, not through the reports, but it can be done through the SQL Management Studio. This can be done, or it can be done for example, if you need a certain user to read reports from the SQL database, you need to put certain users in this group and put them in the read group. So you need to put them in 2 groups, one to access the reports and one to read the database so they can access the reports. Okay, so these 2 groups are working in conjunction. Or if you need certain users to be able to access the reports and change data in these reports, so you need to put them in this group and in the read write group. Okay, so these are the 3 groups that control the access to the SQL database and the reports of the SQL database, and these are the 3 users that will control the access to, or these are the only users that will be able to run the MBAM website and the MBAM software. So we can have first of all, and also I need to have something, the MBAM have 2 types of or the software of the MBAM have 2 type of pages, one for administering the MBAM and one for the help desk, because you can, for example, have other two groups. You will create two Active Directory groups and we will put certain users in it. These users will act as a help desk for the users. For example, if a certain user have a certain recovery key or his BitLocker key is not working, so he need to go to the help desk, okay, so they can run the MBAM software and give him another key, or give him a replacement key instead of his lost BitLocker key. So these are two also two member Active Directory groups, one for basic troubleshooting and the other for some advanced troubleshooting, and also they have access to the database and the reports. Okay, so these two groups we will have them working for us. So we'll have some IT working as a help desk, and this help desk will access the MBAM through another web page. So the MBAM has two portals or two web page, one for administering the software itself, so this will be done through the administrator, and the other for the help desk. Okay, and we will create two groups for the help desk. Through these two groups we can identify which will access the help desk portal and which help desk can do what in for the users. So some of them can release or change the recovery key or issue another recovery BitLocker key for the users, and some can only see reports, for example. We will have some brief about every user. So for example, MBAM ROSVC, this is a read-only service account. This is MBAM Microsoft BitLocker Administrative Monitoring or Administration Monitoring Tool. R is read-only service account, SVC. Okay, and another one is called MBAM RWSVC. It's read and write service account. Okay, and something called MBAM ISSA PSVC. This is ISS Application Pool Service Account. This is the user that will be responsible for running the website of the MBAM software, and the one that will be the administrator for the MBAM software and the MBAM website. So this is a very important user. Okay, and then we will have something called MBAM help desk users. Members of these groups are granted read-only access to the help desk portal, so they have access to the portal. Okay, they can run reports, for example, or they can see data on the MBAM and MBAM website. And this is the MBAM advanced help desk users. Members of these groups are provided with help desk access without need to specify user and computer details for recovery. For example, here this group, they can access the help desk portal and issue a recovery key and something this without specifying a user or computer details. So he can go and just issue any key, okay, and he doesn't need to provide the user and computer details. So he can issue a general recovery key, for example. Maybe I don't know how this is done, but this is the way. And this is MBAM database read-only security group for adding read-only members. So this group can have only read access to the database. This is useful if you have reports only to be run or to read only reports. So users will be put in two groups, one in the read only and one for the reports. So putting them in read only will not be able or will not enable them to run reports, so they need to be put in the reports. Okay, so this is the read only, and then we have the read and write. So we have security group for adding and read write members to the domain. So we put in this group the users that will need to access the database and change data in the database. And at the end we have MBAM report users. Members of this group can access the MBAM reports. Okay, so this is a general idea, or this is a general graph of what is the MBAM. MBAM, it is a software that will run on a web-based server, or it is an application that will be running through a web server. Okay, and this web server or this application has a database that will contain all the data we need, and it will have reports or SQL reports, so it can get data from the SQL database using the SQL reports. Okay, so this is a general idea of the MBAM, but what we do in details we will discuss it also in this lab. I just gave a small graph here, so let's go from here. First of all, we need to download something called Microsoft Desktop Optimization Package software. this Microsoft DVD contains the MBAM software. Okay, so MBAM is a part of the Microsoft Desktop Optimization package, which is including as a part of your Windows Enterprise Volume licensing. Okay, so this is if you have a volume license or Windows Enterprise Volume license. Okay, you can download the latest one, which is 2015. This is the latest one. It works until 2020, of course. Okay, so here is a note: if you need to use BitLocker or to use the BitLocker with newly type of encryption keys or something called ESXTS, you need to, for example, first of all, work with the Sql 2017 database, and you need, after installing the Sql 2017 database, you need to install the agents, or to install the MBAM service pack. For example, the MBAM is a software. There is a service pack for this MBAM software. It's called July service. So we need to work with the Sql 2017 database, and we need, after installing the MBAM software, the one in the DVD, we need to install a service pack or an update for this MBAM software. So this is also through a URL. This can be done. So we go to the website of Microsoft, we download the DVD, and then what we will do after that, we will only download the DVD and keep it aside, and then we will go and create an organizational unit in our Active Directory, and then we will create different users and groups that we have discussed in the previous graph. This is the first step to do, and then after that, what we will do, we need to install just a moment. No, I think this is missing something. So yeah, so after doing this, we need to go, first of all, this will be done, or this Active Directory will go to the domain controller and create all of these users and groups, and then we need to go to the MBAM software, or the MBAM server. We didn't install the MBAM software. All we have to do, that we have downloaded the DVD that contains the MBAM software, and we have created the different Active Directory users and groups needed for the MBAM process, or the MBAM administration. And then we need to put these two users, MBAM read only service and MBAM IIS service account. We need to put these two users in the local group. So we go to the MBAM server, and we go to the local group in the MBAM server, which is called IIS users, and we need to put in it these two users, MBAM ROSVC and MBAM IIS SVC. So we need to go to the MBAM software, MBAM server, and then we need to put these two users in the local group of IIS users. Okay, so again, what we will do, we will download the Microsoft Desktop Optimization DVD. We will create the different users and groups needed for the MBAM operation to complete, or the MBAM administration to complete, and then we go through the domain controller, of course, and then we go to the MBAM server and go to the local group for this server, which is called IIS users, and add the following two users here. Okay, this is the second step. The third step, what we will do after that, we need to configure in the default domain policy, we need these two users, okay, to have to have a certain option attached to them. Okay, for example, we need something called, or we need the user, which is just a minute, I just need to make sure. We need the user which is called MBAM ROSVC. This user needs to have an option called login as batch. Okay, permissions on the SQL server machine. Okay, or the MBAM server. Okay, and add this account to this, I said before, to IIS user group. The MBAM ISP needs a login as batch, or login as batch, and impersonate a client. Okay, so what we have done, we have put in the IIS users the two, or the IIS group, the two users read only MBAM service account and the MBAM IIS service account. We have done this, or put them in the local group IIS users, and then we need to go and configure a group policy. This group policy will allow these two users to have, or to work, or to log in as batch. So these two users should have the option to log in as batch. Okay, this is an option, okay, to configure. So we need to go where to go to configure this option. We will go to the domain controller, and we will have go to the default domain policy, and then to the user rights assignment, and then we will configure these two things. Okay, just a moment, guys. So let's continue, guys. Here, after adding the these two users to the MBAM server local group IIS users, we need to go to domain controller again, and we go to the default domain policy, and then go to the user rights assignment, and then we have these two group policy items configured, login as batch. We need to open this, and we add these two users to this first group, and then to the impersonate a client after authentication we need to add this user. Okay, what is login as batch and what is impersonate a user? Okay, login as batch, this policy setting determines which accounts can log on by using a batch queue tool such as the task scheduler service. When you use the add schedule task wizard to schedule a task to run under a particular username and password, that user is automatically assigned the login as batch job user right. While the scheduler time arrives, the task scheduler service logs on the user as a batch job instead of an interactive user, and the task runs in the user context. So this option, or we are giving these two users the option of login as batch because sometimes they need to run certain tasks. Okay, so this should be done without asking the username and password. Okay, so or it is not. So if you need, for example, every time to run a certain task, you don't need every time to provide a username and password. It will be saved and it will be used. Okay, and this should be done, or this will be done using something called login as script. Okay, or login as batch. Okay, this is what we the description of login as batch policy. What about the impersonate a client after authentication process? This policy setting determines which programs are allowed to impersonate a user or another user specified account and act on his behalf. Okay, if this user right is required for this type of impersonate, an unauthorized user cannot cause a client to connect. For example, if a user needs to connect remotely using the RPC and his user account is not allowed to do this, so you can impersonate, or you can make him access this service under or access this server by changing his administrative level to an authorized level of, or to an authorized level. For example, if this user is not allowed to access or to have remote access, you will lever his limits or his administrative rights. Okay, so this is basically what is impersonate a client after authentication, and what is the login as batch job. Okay, and here we can see that this is a best practice because this is from Microsoft. It suggests that to set up a domain service account, this is a best practice that can access both the SQL database and IIS application. Okay, you have one account to access the database and the application, or the web server and the database, through using a domain service account. And this domain service account should have the login as batch for SQL jobs. For example, this is my concern. So to do SQL jobs, you need to have your username to have login as batch option activated. And if you need to have web server authentication problems, or to avoid web server authentication problems, you need to access or to have impersonate a client after authentication option added. So what we will do, we will have our desktop or Microsoft desktop optimization DVD downloaded, and then we will create the different MBAM users and Active Directory groups, and then we will add the MBAM read-only service account and the MBAM IIS service account to the local group IIS users on the MBAM server, and then we will grant, or we will give the MBAM read-only service account and the MBAM IIS account, give them the option of login as batch. Okay, and give them, or give the IIS user the option of impersonate a client after authentication. So these two will get login as batch option, and only the IIS will get the impersonate client after authentication. So after that, what we will do, we will go now and install. After that we need to do another thing. We need to identify, or we need to do something called service principal name. In order to avoid Kerberos issues, the application pool, this user needs to be configured with a service principal name. If you wish to assign an alternative host or access, for example, this in brief, what we will do here, we need to give our MBAM software a website name. So this will be done using the service principal name. So we'll connect, or we will make this MBAM user to be the one responsible for running the website of the MBAM, and we will also through it we will configure a URL or a name for our MBAM website. So we do this done through something called, or through using these two commands. So here we will have our command. Here we will name our website or the MBAM website edmf so and so, the one that I have discussed in the previous graph. This is the one. So you can access the MBAM website through typing edmf.meu.local, or you just can type the server name only. Okay, so this is done something service principal. So again, we can revise. We will download the Microsoft desktop optimization DVD. We will create the different MBAM users and groups, and then we will put the MBAM read-only service account and the MBAM IIS account in the local group, which is called IIS users on the MBAM server. Okay, and then after that, just a minute. Okay, and then after that, what we will do, after doing this, adding them to this group, we will assign, or will give the MBAM read-only service account and the MBAM IIS account the login as batch option, and then we will give the Microsoft or the MBAM, and then we give the MBAM IIS user account the option of impersonate a client after authentication, and then we will make the MBAM user the responsible for running the website of the MBAM, and we will assign our MBAM software a website name or a website URL. So this until now. Just a moment. Okay, so this is the fourth step, and then what we will do, we will go to our MBAM server and we'll install the web server role. Okay, so we'll add IIS web server role, and we will add netframe feature 3.5 also when we're installing the web server, and then we will run certain commands. So we install additional features to the web server. So this web server will not be installed with all of its features. We will install it from the server manager, and then we will add also the netframe, and then we will run something from the PowerShell to install additional features to the web server. So this is the fourth or fifth step. You can make the access to your MBAM software or MBAM website using a HTTPS protocol or a secure protocol, or using SSL encryption. This also will be discussed through the lab or through the documentation. This is the fourth or fifth step, and then after installing the web server role and the additional features and install the netframe, okay, we will install the additional features using the PowerShell command. Then we need to install something called ASP.NET MVC. This is a program that we need to install before running or before installing the MBAM software. So all of this, we are preparing our server, or this is MBAM Prerequisites. We didn't install the software of MBAM yet. We have only created the different MBAM Active Directory users and group. We have configured or installed the IIS, or configured the web server. We have installed, or we are now installing the Microsoft ASP.NET. So until this, still the MBAM software is not installed. We are just installing the web server, the different creating the different Active Directory users and group that will control the MBAM website and the MBAM software. Okay, so until now, this is the fifth or sixth step, and then until this video, we will install the Sql 2016 database. We will need it. I don't have 2017, but this works. MBAM stores its data in SQL, so obviously a SQL Server instance should be available for all purposes. All SQL versions from 2008 R2 until SQL 2000 are supported by database role, so you can use any of these versions of SQL to work with the MBAM software. But you need to be careful. You need to have a certain option for this database, something called in the configuration of, or during the setup, you need to have in the server configuration in the collation something called SQL Latin general so and so. So this option need to be configured when you install the SQL database. Okay, so SQL reporting is also required, so we not install only the SQL 2016 database with this option in hand, or this option activated. We will also install SQL reporting service, so we will install database services, or SQL database and SQL reporting services only. So remember, using SQL database, sometimes, for example, we need to install or the reporting will be installed separately. So this is the steps, or this is the whole steps. First of all, we will install the Microsoft Desktop Optimization DVD. We will create the different MBAM users and groups. We will add the MBAM read-only service account and the MBAM IIS account to the local group on the MBAM server, which is called IIS users group. We will add these both users to it, and then we will grant them, or we grant these two users login as batch option, okay, through configuring it, or we will give them this option, or we will activate this option on these two users using a group policy through the default domain policy. We will go to user assignment rights through the default domain policy, and we will have two group policies that will grant them login as batch option and impersonate a client after authentication. So we'll give MBAM read-only service account and MBAM ISS Active Directory user the option of login as batch, or activate on them the login as batch option, and we will give the MBAM IIS Active Directory user or activate on the MBAM IIS user the option of impersonate a client after authentication. So these two options are activating using a group policy. Okay, so will be done through the default domain policy, and after that we need to make the MBAM IIS user to be responsible for running the MBAM website. Okay, so as I said before, the MBAM is a software that uses a web server to run on it, so we need to configure the MBAM IIS user to be the user responsible for running the MBAM website, and we need to define a URL, or to define a name for this MBAM website. So this is called service principal name. Okay, so we will do this, and then after that we will install the web server role on the MBAM server, and we will install NetFrame 3.5 on the MBAM server, and then we will install additional options or additional features to the web server after installing it through using a PowerShell command. And after that we will install ASP.NET. Okay, we will install it, and then a note, you can use, or you can have the website of the MBAM to be secure using HTTPS protocol. This can be done. This will be in the documentation. And then after installing the ASP.NET, we need to install the SQL 2016 database, and need to install a certain option on this database called SQL Latin option. This will be done when we install the SQL 2016 database. Sorry, I need to see something at the end. Okay, so as I said before, we need to install the MBAM database 2016. I need to have it an option called Latin so and so we can use the database for or we can use it efficiently. So this is what we will do in this lab. We need to see how this is done. This is done in the practical way, or will be done not theoretically but through a video. So we will go now and begin it. So let's go here, and this is the MBAM, and this is the video number 5, and then we should begin the process. So here, can you just hold on now, just a minute? So let's continue here. We will begin the process of the installation. Here we will first power on the first domain controller. Through it we will create the different MBAM Active Directory users and groups. Through it we will control the whole process or the whole program of the MBAM, the part concerning its website, or the part concerning its database, or the part concerning the application itself. Okay, so here I am using my using my domain admin account. This is the website that I have told you before. This is the one that we will use it as a reference or as a guide for completing the process of the installation or the configuration and installation of the MBAM, and also preparing or the prerequisites of the MBAM. All of this is listed in this website. So here I am just downloading the ASP.NET, the one that we will configure it later, and these are the different service packs. For example, if we are installing or we are working with SQL 2016 database with the MBAM, we need to update the MBAM software, because the MBAM software works with a certain SQL database, and if there is different versions or there is different things, we need to update the MBAM software. So here we will begin creating the different Active Directory users concerning the MBAM service, the one we had been discussing in the video, or sorry, in the graph. So the first account we will create is the MBAM read-only service account, and I should also take note that most of all of the users or the Active Directory users for the MBAM application should have its password never expire, because these are considered service accounts. So this should be running 24/7. So if you have a password that will expire, this may be make the MBAM not work, or it will stop working. So we need to consider to have the password for the different Active Directory users concerning the MBAM to have the option of password never expire, and you need to change the password manually by yourself. So you need to take a note when you have created the password, and you need to change the password for these service accounts manually, but you need to configure the option of password never expire for these users, because they are service accounts and they need to be running 24/7. So here we will create a new organizational unit, and we name it MBAM, and then we will create the first user, which is MBAM read-only service account. Okay, so we will take one example, and you can follow the upcoming, or we can follow it one by one, so do not repeat the process. So here we have a username. Okay, paste, and then next. Okay, and then we will make it password never expire. Then we give it a password. You need to take note that this username should change its password manually. Okay, and you take a note, for example 90 days, you need to change it after 90 days if you have an expiry date for 90 days. Okay, Of course you will not apply it, but this is for the other users. Okay, so this is the first one, and we need to take the description, and then we will go to the account. Okay, open the properties of the account, and then we will put the description. Okay, and then we should follow the rest. We can just pass it real quickly. So here we can see that we are making, or here we have done all of the users with the same concept, and then he will create a group, the group for the help desk. Okay, copy, and then we will create it. Okay, next, and then we should go to the description. Okay, and put it. We will go, you can use the website to take this description. It is already in the website, so then we can put the description. Okay, and then we create the different groups. This is for the help desk. Okay, and then we have one for the database, and then we have one for the reports, the one that we have discussed in the graph. So here we can see, just for a moment, so here we can get it also. So here this is all of the groups. We can go a little bit further. So here we can see that you have created all of them, the users for the read and write MBAM service account, the read only MBAM service account, the MBAM IS AP service account. This is the one responsible for managing the website of the MBAM, and this is the MBAM reports users. This is the group that if you put any user in it, this should allow him to see reports from the MBAM website or the MBAM software. And this is the help desk group, that if you put any user in it, it will allow him to see and manage certain parts of the MBAM website, especially the help desk portal. This will allow, if you put a user in this group, it will allow this user to access the MBAM help desk portal page and have some options open for him. And these two groups are for the database, so if you need some users to read some data from the database of the MBAM, you can put them in the read only. If you need some to read and change, you can put them in the MBAM read and write. And then this is the advanced users group. This you can put any user in it. It will allow him to have advanced options through the MBAM help desk portal page. So this is for normal help desk. This can read only or get data, but this this is for advanced help desk that can issue recovery keys, see recovery keys, and so on. So this is the users. And then we need, after that, after creating all of the users and the groups, we need to go, this is done through the domain controller. So we need now to go to the MBAM server and put the MBAM read only service account and the MBAM IIS service account in a local group in the MBAM server, which is called IIS user. So here we will start the MBAM server. It's only a normal server that have Windows Server 2019 installed on it, and we have joined it to the domain. So this is a server or a member server. It's not domain controller. It's not a best practice to install MBAM on a domain controller. So you need to install it on a normal server. This is a best practice. Okay. I think we can bust it real quickly. We can go here. So now here we have I think you can go a little bit further. So here remember the principal name, we will not do it. You can do it before putting the, we said in the graph or in the graph. Yes, you can set up the service principal name. This is a way, or this is through these two commands we will give our MBAM software a website name. So the MBAM software uses a website. Through it you can control the software. So it's a software and its interface is a web interface. Okay, so this web interface needs to have a name. So here we will put, or we'll make a website for our MBAM software, but this is not correct. We need to change the MBAM because our server is not named MBAM. This is the server name and the domain name, and this is the server name, so it needs to be EDMF02. okay, so it needs to be EDMF02, the one, or it will be the name of the server, that website, that the web server role is installed on it, which is EDMF02. so this is not correct. We need to change it, and we will change it later. Okay, so don't worry. So by using this step, we are registering, or it's like registering a name for our MBAM website, or MBAM URL. Okay, we make it by two ways. So we can name the website of the MBAM according to the name of the server of the MBAM plus the domain name, or we can name it according to the server only. Okay, and we will make the one responsible for running this website with all of its rights and permissions. We will give it to the MBAM ISAP Active Directory user account. Okay, so when we do it once by the name of the server plus the domain name, and by the server name only, but this is not correct because the server name, it's not MBAM, it's EDMF02. So now we're opening the MBAM server, and then we'll go to the local group on this server, which is called IIS users, and put our MBAM IIS username in it, and MBAM read-only service account in it. Okay, so by putting these two users in it, in this local group, we are allowing these two users to run the MBAM website, because if you did not put them in this local group, the Active Directory user account MBAM IS will not be able to open the website of the MBAM. So we need to be careful, because you need this website to be operational. Okay, so now we will go, first of all, this is the idle log off program. This is a program that I use to log off the machine if it is idle for 3000 seconds. But this program is initialized or ran by the login script, but the login script can't see the location of the program because it's not there. So I need to go to the C drive of this server and put the program itself, because I forgot to put the program. The script goes to a folder called C idle log of .txe. This is the location of the program, and runs it. So the script goes to a certain location to run the program of the idle log off, but he didn't find it. So I need to make a folder for the idle log off program and idle log off program. So the script, the next time it runs, it will see the location and can be able to find the program and run it. This program idle log off can be put on the servers, because you don't need to have or to log in to your server all the time. So this can be a good or a best practice on servers. Okay, so this can be a good practice on servers, but for workstations it's not very practical, because on the server you need to have log off of the server, because you can access remotely from outside, so you don't need to locally or physically log into the machine. Okay, so here I have this program and its folder on the domain controller, so I will copy it and put it on my MBAM server. So the next time the login script runs, it will see it can reach the program of idle logoff. So because the idle logoff program in the script, it is in C idle logoff.exe. So now we need to go to the local group of the MBAM server, which is called IIS user. By putting a user in this group, this user will be given the permission to run the website of the MBAM. So here we will add to the IIS users by right click computer management, and then we'll add MBAM read only service account and the IIS service account. And after that we need to grant these two users two type of permissions or type of options to login as batch. So we need the read only service account and IIS service account to have login as batch option, and the IIS service accounts to have the option of impersonate a client after authentication. I think we need to pass this because it's not correct anyway, so we need to pass it real quickly because it will not work. I think here goes, I think, yes. So here we can pass it real quickly. Okay, so here we will add it. Okay, I think it's not correct. Okay, just a moment. I need just to make sure that I'm correctly seeing it. Okay, so this is not correct. No, I think that you have passed something. Just a moment. So here, okay, so here it will not work. So here there is also some programs. Here I will have the ASP program I have downloaded already, and I can install it later. So here I will go to the BitLocker Prerequisites. Okay, this is the program, and I will copy it and put it on my PC here, or on my MBAM server. So let's go here, and then I think we need to pass this because it will not be as the interest. Just a moment. So here we need to go and just pass it real quickly. I think there is a problem here. Just a moment, guys, because I think there is a problem here. Okay, just a moment. Okay, no, I think there is a problem here. Okay, just a moment. Okay, so here we will go, and from here we have added it already. Okay, we add the two users, and then this is the installing the IIS web or the web server on the MBAM, but this is not the process, or this is before giving the users login as batch. And okay, so I forgot here, guys. Just here I forgot to give the MBAM read only service account and the MBAM IIS account, to give them login as batch option and impersonate a client option. So you need to do this after putting them in the local group. So what I did, I just go with installing the server or the web server or the web server service on the server. Okay, so we can just pass this real quickly. This is not the process. So here what we will do, we will add the so we will add the web. So after putting the users or read only user account and the IIS service account in the IIS local group users on the MBAM server, we will install the web server services on the MBAM server. We need to take care that we need to first, before that, we need to put or to give the two users login as batch and impersonate a client after authentication. So here we will install the web server service. Okay, and then add features. Next. And then we will have the net frame installed. Okay, next, 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 and then we will as for the net frame, you need to have the Windows Server 2019 DVD inserted, because he will get the net frame 3.5 from it. So you need to insert the DVD as we have done this. Put it from the Hyper-V options, insert the DVD, and then we need to tell him the location of the net frame. It is in E, it will be in E. Okay, so here is the location of the DVD. It's in E sources SXS. Okay, this is the location of the net frame. Okay, so again we repeat, after doing the users and putting them in the local IIS user group, we need to install, or we need first to give them the login as batch and impersonate client after authentication, and then we need to install the web server. So here we are installing the web server service. So now after installing the web server, we need to copy this command and run it in PowerShell. So now I've installed the web server role and the net frame 3.5. After doing this, we need to run the following PowerShell command. And then press enter. But I said before, I have forgot the step of granting the read-only service account and IIS service account for the MBAM, to grant them login as batch for both, and only impersonate a client after authentication for the IIS Active Directory user account. So this will take a little bit of time about collecting the data and then start the installation. So we have already collected, this is, or this line, we add certain features to the web server, because this is the web server when it is installed through the server manager, not all of the features are installed. So by using this PowerShell command, we install the additional web server features needed by the MBAM. So we install the web server and net frame, and then completing the web server components, the necessary or the missing web server components, we will use this command, our PowerShell command. I think we can pass it real quickly here, just a moment. Just a moment here. So here it's successful. Yeah, it's already done the installation. So now we need to install the ASP.NET, or the ASP.NET need to be installed, and then after that at the end we will install the SQL 2016 database that the MBAM software will use. So here the prerequisites have already downloaded the ASP.NET and the MBAM clients and MBAM software. So this folder contains the ASP.NET VMC or MVC software, and it contains also the MBAM software. So you install the ASP or Microsoft ASP.NET, install, and during this we can go to the domain controller and correct the website name, because the website name of the MBAM server, it's not mbam.meu.local, it's admf.meu.local, the name of the server. Okay, so we have mistaken this, so we need to make it right. I think I have mistaken it, or it is paused. Yes, okay, so thinking I can pause it real quickly. No, it's playing. Okay. So we can go to the first domain controller and change the name of the web server, or name of the MBAM web server, to edmf.meu.local instead of mbam.meu.local. And this is how you can make your MBAM server or MBAM website works with HTTPS connection or using SSL certification. This is also in the documentation. I didn't do it for time, and it will take a little bit of time, so I didn't do it in this video, but it is there. You can do it. You need to make a certificate and put it in the MBAM website, but this is not it. Anyway, you can do it. This is very simple, but here I prefer to use the MBAM with the normal connection, or connect to the MBAM server using HTTP connection. Okay, so here this is the video that I'm using as a reference. This is for a guy called MDT. I will show you the website or the YouTube channel. So here we will go and configure the SQL. We have finished, I think we have finished the ASP.NET. After finishing the ASP.NET, we need to go first rectify the problem of the website of the MBAM, but after installing the ASP we need to install the SQL database. But first of all we need to correct the problem, because the website, we need to make it not MBAM, it's EDMF02. This is the website, this is the server that contains the website of the MBAM. Okay, so this is the correct one, because I have mistaken it. So we need to run it. Because the name of the server, it's not MBAM, it's EDMF02. Okay, so we need to be more specific. Okay, so here we will insert the DVD of the SQL 2016. And by the way, the SQL 2016, we need to access the SQL database but this DVD doesn't contain the management studio or the program that we can use to connect and change or make changes to the database of the MBAM. Okay, the SQL or this DVD doesn't contain the program that we can use to connect to this database. Okay, so this DVD only contains the database as a program, but for database as an option or as a feature, but the program to work or to access this database, it's called Management Studio. So we will install it later. We are only now installing the database itself. Okay, but you need to take care that we need to install the Management Studio so we can be able to connect and change the database if we need. So here we will install the SQL database. You need to make sure the SQL database 2016, we need to have the SQL Latin option activated. I will show you all when we reach this point. I think we can get a little bit quicker here. Okay, so here we go. So here we will launch new SQL server standalone installation. Okay, so here I think here it's paused. So here we'll accept the agreement. Then we don't have internet for this server, so I will skip the update for the server or update for the database itself, because if it has internet, maybe it can download SQL 2017 anyway. Here it runs a couple of tests, and it tells you that, for example, you need to allow in your firewall or to have firewall rules to allow SQL database connection. Okay, so for example, if you need to run reports, okay, from your, for example, if you are on a PC of a client or on a workstation in your domain, and you need to run the MBAM software or the MBAM website, and the MBAM websites runs the database, you need your firewall on your client and your server to allow a connection to the database so you can run reports for the MBAM. Okay, so you need to have your firewall. He is giving a warning to the MBAM and the net security, so they need to have a firewall rule to allow the SQL ports to be opened, so you can, your website of MBAM can use the SQL database, and you can connect to the SQL database from outside your server, from the client side. So you have to open both ports for SQL database to access the database from the server side and the client side. Okay, he's telling me that you don't have internet connection. The only problem is was the firewall, so you need to if the firewall is enabled, you need to have a rule to allow SQL connection, so you can access the MBAM website from the client side and to run reports on this database from the client side. Okay, so here we will install some role features. We only need to install the database engine services and the reporting services, and we need to have the Management Studio tools installed. This is that we can use, or the tool that we'll use to connect to the database of the SQL, but it is not with this DVD, so we will install it separately. Okay, and at the bottom is the location of the database. It will be in C, so and so. Okay, the management tools, we don't have the management tools. Okay, so the management tools, it is the tool that we use to connect to the database of the SQL. Okay, so here we don't have it in this SQL 2016 database. We will install it in the upcoming video, so don't worry. Okay, and you need in the server configuration to have the collation to be the SQL Latin option. This we have, as I said before, as I told you all in the graph. Okay, so here the database will be named the default MS SQL server. So here we will name it as it is. As for the server configuration, So here they're telling us that to run this SQL database we need to have certain users to run this database. So we need to these users to run the database, so we need to make it automatically. So all of these services or these services need to be run by accounts, and these accounts should run it, and this service should be up and running. So the database will not work unless all of the 4 services are up and running. So you can see here that some services should be run manually. We will make it automatically, and we will run all of them automatically, and we will leave it to the local Windows users or local NT service account to run this to run this SQL database services. Okay. I prefer if you have an Active Directory user account and let him run all of the SQL database services, and this SQL or Active Directory SQL account, Active Directory account should be a service account and to have a password never expire. The same like the MBAM user. Here we will connect to the database using my Active Directory user account or Windows authentication. If we need to access the database, we can access it using the Active Directory user account. So I will add my username and we'll add the IT Active Directory group, so the IT Active Directory group can access the SQL database and myself. Okay. Just need to do something here, guys, because I forgot to do something here. So let's go a little bit more further here. So as for the server configuration, we need to go to the collation and remember to choose the SQL Latin. So here we can see from here this one that we need not to forget. As for the SQL, okay, for the collation, okay, so in the collation, from this option in the collation we need to choose the SQL Latin 1 general CSP CS so and so collation. So we need to choose this one. Okay, so do not forget, and then we will go and complete the process. So here, as I said before, we give the user access to the database, and then we will tell him to install Sql Reporting tools native. Next, and install. And then installation process. Okay, so it will be completed anyway, so it's completed the installation. Okay, and that's it. The upcoming video will begin installing the MBAM software itself. Here, this is the Microsoft this is the Microsoft. I have inserted the DVD of the Microsoft desktop optimization DVD. This is the DVD that I have been discussing in the beginning of the video. So this is DVD. We will take the MBAM program from this DVD. Okay, so this is the DVD this is the program of the MBAM. So we need to insert the Microsoft desktop optimization package DVD in our Hyper-V and take copy of the folder. Okay, and then begin the installation in the upcoming video. This is part 1. Okay, of the video. So the upcoming video will begin installation of the MBAM. Okay, this is, I think, let me show you all the. So this is, we will begin installing the MBAM server and then the MBAM client. So this is the folder and this is the server and the client. This will be done in the upcoming video. Hope this video is informative for you all, and I would like to thank you all for viewing. Thank you so much.